I don't care if no one shows up to the games. If I think the ethical thing to do is to vote, the other way of 29 other guys, I will. I've said it publicly many times. What he said was awful, right? It was horrific.
Right.
It was racist. There's no place for it in the NBA. But that's not going to force me to make up my mind without hearing all the facts. Everybody's got to be careful because everything's changed, and that's the slippery slope, part of the slippery slope that I talked about, because we're all going to be held to a different standard going forward.
Outspoken Dallas Mavericks owner taking to the airwaves once again to defend his choice if there were a vote to oust Donald Sterling. He said that on Thursday, right after it was reported that former Microsoft CEO Steve Ballmer won the bidding war for the Clippers with his $2 billion offer. Stephen A., we'll turn to you. Your reaction to Cuban's latest comments.
Reading them and hearing them, you get two different reactions. Reading them, I'm like, what the hell is wrong with this man? How ignorant can you be? What do you mean you don't care if nobody shows up to your games?
Yeah, no, we didn't hear that.
Right, we didn't hear that until just now. So when you read it, you have a different reaction because it seems senseless and you just seem to be talking out of both sides of your mouth. What's wrong with you? But then when you hear what he has to say, I understand where Mark Cuban's coming from. He's an owner in this league. He doesn't want to be held to that standard. He doesn't want somebody to hear him say something out of turn, and then as a result, ownership can be confiscated from him. That's where he's going here, and I understand that. My response to Mark Cuban, however, would be something as simple as this. You on the record talking about how heinous his words were, how it reflects so badly on the NBA. But the key sentence that I would ask Mark Cuban to hold on to from himself is when he said, there's no place for this in the NBA. Stop right there. The league is 76% African-American. This man was caught, whether illegally, secretly taped. We get all of that.
Yeah.
We understand it. You understand? But let's stop treating this man like we put him in cuffs and we're throwing him in prison. No. What we're saying is, you bought the team for $12.5 million. You're selling it for $2 billion. Take your money and your 80-year-old self and have a nice few years that you have left on this earth with your racist behind and go away. That's all anybody's saying. Nobody's throwing him in jail. Nobody's confiscating his rights. Nobody's violating his civil rights. Nobody's doing anything to Donald Sterling. And if that is a fact, which it is, then Mark Cuban has an obligation, in my estimation, and we are listening right now to somebody who totally found nothing wrong with what Mark Cuban had to say a couple of weeks ago when he talked about all of us have our prejudices. I supported him then, I support him now. But he needs to understand that while I'm saying that, I also understand that if you sully the brand and you impugn its integrity, its reputation, its name, okay? And therefore, you compromise the business because sponsors and advertisers walked away from you because they wanted nothing to do. I was there in L.A. in the immediate aftermath of Donald Sterling's statements. I was outside in L.A. Live while you have folks on ladders pulling down their advertisements because Donald Sterling still owned the Clippers. I was inside the Staples Center where all the advertisers, their logos were covered in black because they wanted nothing to do with the Clippers. That compromises the NBA brand. So if you're on the record, Mark Cuban, and you say, quote, you know what he said was heinous, unacceptable, and there's no place for it in the NBA, then that explains to you why he has to go and why you should vote. You should be one of the owners to vote him out because you're acknowledging he has no place in the NBA. And that's as simple as that. It's just a smart business thing.
I agree with what you just said. To the point, I think Mark is putting himself on a slippery slope.
Yes, he is.
With his players of his team.
Yeah.
Because they have to start wondering, well, what are you doing? You're defending maybe Donald Sterling, but at least you're defending his right to due process in the NBA, right? He says, I want to hear the facts. Well, most people, starting with yourself, leap to the conclusion, as you should have, I don't need any more facts. I heard the tape. Illegally recorded or not, you know how this man spoke, what's in his heart. Then we were able to frame it with what he's done in the past in his business practices, and everybody said, that's enough. But Mark Cuban is saying, no, This man has a right. And Mark Cuban, when we were on the hoodie comment, remember?
Yeah.
And I kept trying to make the point, even though you were fixated on hoodie, as you should have been, but I kept saying, wait, bigger picture. I think Mark Cuban's trying to plant the seeds of, hey, we all have our prejudices. Let's give this man, Donald Sterling, a little bit of a break here. Not a pass, but a break. And I think he wanted to hear other facts come out in a due process, you know, sort of an NBA trial within the bylaws of the NBA, which we didn't get to have, we think, because because the sale went through.
The sale's going to go through, and they're not going to have to vote tomorrow.
So is not Mark Cuban, and he went to the point of saying, hey, I don't even care if people come to my games. I want due process, because now everything's changed. Now we all can be held accountable for something that was privately recorded. And he said, in the end, I want to know what people do as opposed to what people say.
Couple of things. I'm not going to dishonor their trust by saying who, but I spoke to a couple of owners. And both owners are having a problem with Mark Cuban feeling the need to open his mouth. Because they're like, you know, what is he thinking? What is he doing?
Yeah.
He really needs to chill. That's number one. Spoke to them over the phone. Number two, I like Mark Cuban. I think he's a straight up honest guy. And I'm one of those guys, if you're honest and straightforward and real about who you are and what you stand for, I'm going to always lean towards giving you the benefit of the doubt, because I respect the honesty and the courage it takes to be honest. But at the same time, I'm looking at Mark Cuban and it's like, you going a little extra mile now. Because, again, I agree with him when he's talked about the prejudices in all of us, right? But more to what you were trying to point out that day, he seems to be excessively going about the business of trying to defend Donald Sterling.
Sure.